This is what you must remember. The ending of one story is the beginning of another. This has happened before, after all. Hello, my lovely friends, it's Mark, and it is time for another Fresh Reads Friday. For those of you that are new to the channel, Fresh Reads Friday is the series where I talk about my most recent reads that I love. Today, we're going to be talking about The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. Now, this is a adult fantasy sci-fi. I'm not entirely sure because it's weird. It's listed as sci-fi on Goodreads, but reading it, it felt a lot more like a high fantasy, just the way the world building and all of that is. And I will get into the reasons as to why a little bit later, but just regardless of whether it's sci-fi or fantasy, it's definitely dystopian, but whether it's whatever the genre is, I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was fantastic. It's one of my favorite books of the year now. The main plot of this is about Essen. She is a 30-something-year-old woman living in this world where there are these things called seasons, and there are the first 4 seasons, which are kind of just normal, regular, and then there is the 5th season, and the 5th season always means great upheaval, death, just lots of bad things happening in general. She lives in a world that is plagued by earthquakes, and they have these people called orogenies that are trained so that they can kind of calm the earthquakes and make it possible for civilization to exist, because without it, the world is just basically quaking the entire time. Unfortunately, these orogenies, because people don't really understand them, they're kind of outcast. And Essen comes home one day to find that her husband has killed their 3-year-old son, and that is because both she and her son and her daughter are all orogenies. It's very rare that there's one that's not controlled by the main government, but apparently Essen is one of them. So in this time of huge upheaval, she ends up embarking on this quest to track down her husband and get her daughter. Along the way, we do run into several other characters. She kind of gathers a little bit of a following, and there's more to that, obviously, but I don't want to tell you too much. There is a huge trigger warning, obviously, for child death, because her son dies in the first, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 chapters, and she is continually trying not to think about it. So it's not something that just happens and then she moves on, obviously, because you wouldn't be able to move on from something like that, but you are continually being reminded of the fact that this has happened. So if that's something that might be a little bit hard for you, I would definitely not read this if you have small children. Know yourself, but just be warned that that is in there. So obviously, since I gave this 5 stars, I absolutely adored it. I tried it actually first as an audiobook, and I just could not pay attention to the audiobook well enough for me to grasp what was going on in the world. But once I sat down and picked up the physical book and started reading through it, oh my gosh, it draws you in, it sucks you in, and you're just like, whoa. And one of my favorite parts about this book is it is written, parts of it are written in second person. It's 3 different narratives with 3 different, a girl and 2 different women, and the main narrative, which is Essen's, is in second person. And I didn't even notice that until I was maybe 50 pages into the book. I was like, oh yeah, this is second person. That is how gripping and compelling and how quickly it draws you in to the story. I'm not someone who usually gets caught up and impressed and notices story structure in a way that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But this is one of those where I was like, the story structure of this novel was impeccable. The way it all comes together in the end, it was just fantastic. I can't really tell you much more than that, but just the way that each story is built upon the other, just beautiful. I also really liked the world building. I thought it was really well fleshed out. I thought that it was very complex, but not in a way that you're sitting there going, huh? I need to reread this page 4 different times. This novel has such a wonderful balance between plot and character. So the plot and the characters are so well interwoven that I didn't feel like one came out being stronger than the other. I loved both of them. I loved Essen as a main character because she just got stuff done. She focused on what she needed to do. She had her goal, and she did what was necessary to pursue that goal. All of her characters are varied. There wasn't a single character that was like, oh, I feel like we've seen this person before in the book. She ends up running, and her journey, she ends up running across a whole bunch of different people, and she ends up picking up kind of this little ragtag group of her and this child and this older woman. They just make such a funny group together. They all have their different strengths. They all have a different part that they're playing in the story. They were all compelling. I was interested in all of them. You're not sitting there, especially with her narrators, because she has 3 different narrators, you're not sitting there going, I don't really care for this point of view. All of them are part of this puzzle and this mystery that you're sitting there going, how did things get this way? Where are we in this story? Each of her narrators brought a lot of questions with them, and they each had a specific answer that you eventually kind of started to piece together as you're reading. You started to kind of understand how their different plot threads were going to meet up. I thought that was fantastic. I just, when I figured that out, when I realized what was going on, I was just again, blown away by the skill of her writing. Her world building was beautiful. Now, it's not one where you're kind of eased into the world. It's not one of those novels. It's one where she just kind of throws you in and lets you figure stuff out as you're going. However, at the same time, like, I really liked how she built to different things. Like, yes, I was left with a lot of questions, especially like the first, I'd say 100 or so pages, you're gonna have a lot of questions and you're gonna be going, what the heck is going on right now? And there's a reason that you're asking those questions. She just kind of like throws things in and lets you piece everything together as you go. She doesn't spoon feed you stuff, and I appreciated that. I didn't feel like I was getting left behind. If you've been on this channel at all, you know that I'm the type of reader that I like to have those little pieces and kind of put them together myself and try and figure out what's going on ahead of the story. I just like doing that. I'd rather be right than be surprised. I just liked that aspect of her world building because I didn't feel like she left you, like she didn't completely leave you, like she gave you a lifeboat. Like she didn't leave you completely in the lurch going, oh, here's this world and you don't know anything about it. There were ways that you were learning about what was going on. They just were not necessarily the conventional ways that you might be used to. Like it wasn't like, here's 6 pages of info dump about what the world is like and why this is this and why this is that. I mean, there were a couple of pages of that, but they were done so well that it was still a story. It is so deeply ingrained that by the time you get past that first 100 pages, you're just like, oh yeah, this is old hat. I know what's going on. I loved how interwoven the plot was. All 3 narrators are kind of like, they're separated from each other by various things. And so, but all 3 of them are working towards this one specific point and this one specific goal that we get to. The way she made everything work together and become a part of one plot, all I could think when I figured out what was going on was, whoa, just whoa. Everything that's going on is definitely, there's more going on than it first seems. There's more to these characters. There's more to this story. There's more to this world that's going on. There are still a lot of questions about the world that we don't know the answers to because the characters don't know the answers to them yet. But I think the next 2 books, because this is part of a trilogy, I think the next 2 books we're gonna maybe find out some of that. There's a lot of questions about, this circles back to the world building, but there's a lot of questions about different technologies and different things that they have. Now, I will say, I didn't feel like this was sci-fi. There was not a single point in this where it felt like sci-fi to me. It felt more like high fantasy. Okay, just know that going into it. It's definitely futuristic, I feel, because they're on this future world where everything is just, it's crap. It's a disaster because they are living basically with daily natural disasters. Again, that's why they need the Origines, because they're continually having to deal with these different quakes, and they have different people placed in different places to still the earth. But, like, for the most part, it didn't feel like there was a science-based explanation. It was just, here's this ability that people are able to do. Now, I might be wrong. This might be something that I see later on in the series, but the way that the plot and the world building came together, it just felt more high fantasy. It felt more something that you would read in a Brandon Sanderson novel than you would read in a David Weber novel. You know what I mean? Which, it's fine. It's a good book, but who cares what the genre is? If you're looking for a great book to read, you should pick this one up. If you like books with strong world building, if you like books that are quest kind of journey-based books, this is a good one. If you like books that have a crazy cast of characters, you know, all of those fun, quirky characters that you'll have on some of those journey books, yeah, this is a great book for you to read. Let me know in the comments if you have read the 5th season. If you've already had a crack at this book, I would love to know some of your thoughts. Remember to keep it polite and respectful to everyone down there. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, hit that subscribe button. I make videos 2 to 3 times a week about books and writing, and I would love to see your lovely face here on a regular basis. That is it for now, my friends. Happy reading, and I will see you later when we will talk about more wordy, nerdy things. Bye! I have notes here somewhere. Oh, will you turn this off? I'm gonna regret that so much.